This is a video for replacing the LCD monitor on a Toshiba L745-S4235. The first thing we have to do is pull off some little black tabs that are covering up the screws. I'm going to give you a close-up of, I've removed 3 of them already, and you can see underneath right there is a Phillips head screw. I have one more, which you can see right there, it's black, but that black tab to remove. I now have all 4 screws out of the 4 corners of the screen. You can kind of see where the holes are. I'll close up a little, but in each of the corners there were those 4 tabs that were over the holes. There was Phillips head screws I took out, and then next we want to carefully pry off the bezel that's around the monitor. And the best way I've found to do that is to get a small flathead screwdriver, and in one part of the screen of the bezel here, pry it up. And once you have one section of that up, is just to go all the way around, carefully, very carefully prying it loose, and you'll hear like little snapping sounds, but it's not anything breaking. It's just the tabs coming loose. And believe me, I am always paranoid about breaking these kind of things, but I found on this L745-S4235 that it actually came off pretty easy. But again, the key is get started in one spot and then slowly work your way around until you get the whole bezel loose. I'm going to go ahead and remove that now, and then I'll be back for the next part. Now that the bezel is off, you can see it here. And the other thing to watch when you're taking this out is you can see those are curved a bit. So you just want to be careful when you're pulling that out of the 2 slots that you I put this kind of the screwdriver in there on the side and kind of gently pried it out, and it just came right out of there. So again, we've got the bezel that we've taken off. Next thing we're going to do once that's off, there's 4 screws on the side. I'm going to kind of give you a side view over here, and you can see there's 4 screws. One screw is there. There's one on the bottom here, and the exact same thing on the other side. So you want to take all 4 of those screws out, and then you'll see the bracket that holds the monitor there will be loose. That's okay. Once you get those 4 screws out, you'll then want to loosen the tape that's on the back of here. You'll see the monitor cable there is taped onto the back. So we'll carefully remove the tape. And then the next thing I need to do here, if you can see that close enough, there's a piece of clear tape that's holding the connector in. So I'm now going to take that tape off and get the monitor cable totally off the LCD screen, and I will be back in just a second. So you can see here now I've peeled all the tape off. So the cable, which will connect into the new monitor, is now loose. And now I can take the old screen, and we'll go get the new one and get it replaced in here, and then just reverse our steps. So here's the new LCD screen that I just received via FedEx. You can see it's got a nice cover on it protecting the screen. The back side looks pretty much identical to the old one. So what we're going to do now, you can see there's the connector. So we're going to take the cable that we loosened earlier and just fasten that back on the monitor here. So if I can do this without getting my hands in the way too badly. So this cable will slide right into the slot there, and I can see it's not going to work, so I will be, as soon as I get that back in, I will be back. Now you can see I have that reconnected. I have a piece of tape down holding it in. It's taped down there. I'm now going to raise the screen up. We'll attach this board here is attached to the back side of the top of the screen, and there's some sticky stuff here that will attach to the top of the screen here when I put it back up. So what I'm going to do now is basically just put the screen back up, get it fastened into the brackets, and the brackets here were those 4 screws that we removed earlier. So I'm going to get that screen set back up, screwed in, and we'll be back to finish the install. Okay, as you can see now, I have the screen back into place. I haven't screwed the brackets back in yet with the 4 screws, but I wanted to make a note of one thing. If you see the board on top there, which I believe is where the camera is, sometimes that might come a little loose, but there is a tab coming out of the case that you need to make sure you clip that into, so that when you put the bezel back on, that is lined up and still operating correctly. So right now I'm going to put the 4 screws in on the side, and then we'll continue from there. So here's the screen back in. I've got the 4 screws back in so the bracket's tight. And then what we're going to do, you can see, I'll give you a side shot here. It's a little loose from here, but once we put the bezel back on and screw that back in, this will be tight against the lid. So next is putting the bezel back on. I wanted to test this before I totally got the bezel back on, since that's a little bit of a pain. And as you can see, Windows is coming back up. Now I wish I had taken a video of the before. The screen was just totally cracked, and you could see a little on the left hand side, you know, that things were still visible. And I also had the customer plug it into an external monitor just to make sure the video card was okay. And as you can see, this is coming up great. So I'm going to get the bezel back on, screw the bezel back in, and then we should be off and running. And I will do a final shot here when I show you the computer totally finished. As I'm putting on the bezel, I just wanted to make a note. You can see right here, this sort of clips around the pivot or the hinge. So what I found the easiest thing to do is, when you get that in there, just kind of gently push, and it clips right in around the hinge pivot point there. And then we're just going to go all the way around and push the bezel in, make sure it's good and secure, and then put the 4 screws back in, and then the 4 covers. Again, I'll be back. Once I get that done, we'll turn the computer on one more time, and then we'll be done. Another comment I wanted to make when you're putting the bezel back on, this is looking at the bottom of the computer. The battery's out, and you can see I have the screen open, and I just ran my fingers along. Let me show you here. Run my fingers along the edge here, pushing in, just to make sure all these tabs are in tight. It's hard to get it in tight when you're putting the bezel in from the screen side, from here. So I find it's best to turn that over the way I had it, and then just with your finger kind of squeeze, make sure it's real tight, and then looking down from here, I can see we have a much better fit to the screen there in the bottom once you do that. I now have the 4 screws that I showed you earlier in the 4 corners. 2, 3, 4. I'm now going to put the black tabs back on there to cover those up. Here is the completed laptop. As you can see, I got the little black tabs back on there. And now I told you I was going to have the battery in. I lied. I'm just going to keep it running while I do that. And then we'll see it come back on, and I'll have a happy customer. I am very happy with the company I bought the screen from. So just push the button. Here we go. And there it comes on. Just perfect. Great. Well, thanks for watching the video. Again, this was a screen replacement on an L745-S4235.